everyone. One of the most common questions I've been getting all day long is, you ever seen one? Yeah, I've seen one. Here, North Carolina. I love North Carolina, so thank you very, very much for bringing me back here. It's been too many years since I've been. And a lot of stuff has been going on in my life, and I want to share some of those things with you, and then perhaps if we have any time, we can take a few questions or something. And I already know the questions you're going to ask. Does Renee really not believe? You find them yet? All those sort of stuff. And I'll even be happy to field those questions if we need to. But I wanted to talk to you about some of the stuff I've been up to, because I've been up to a lot of stuff. Oh, here's another common question. When's the show coming back on? It's not. Nothing I love more than making an entire crowd sad. No, the show has been canceled, and here's why. I'm going to say it one time, and then all those other people who aren't here right now can come up and ask me at my booth later. The show has always been successful. We've always gotten very, very good ratings. We range between 800,000 and 1.2 million a week. It's really, really good, especially nowadays. But between 2011 and 2018, when the show went off the air, the ratings for cable television in general, everything from history to Fox News to you name it, whatever, dropped half. So while we remained constant and popular and expensive, they lost a lot of money because everything went down to half. They figured we could throw a lot less money at a smaller show and still make the same profit. Let's do that. And so they did, which is fine. I know you may be sad about it, but you try being on the road with Moneymaker Renee and Bobo for 7 or 8 months a year. It's enough to drive anybody nuts. But they are my road family, and I love them all, so don't take that as a slam. But one of the most exciting things I've got going, since I actually am home now, and home is Oregon. I live in a little town called Sandy, Oregon, outside of Portland, where I live off in the woods on the slopes of Mount Hood. I am married. I met my wife on the show. She was part of the production team. And we slowly fell in love, and I stole her from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She lives out there in the woods with me. Thank you. And by the way, I also found my other great love, my dog, on the show. Her name is Sochi, and we found her on the Humboldt episode, Bobo's Backyard, I think it was called, when we interviewed his father, if you remember that one. We found my dog tied to a tree by a leash 8 inches long, left to die out in the woods. And so we rescued her, and in a big way she rescued me as well. So my two greatest loves, my wife and my dog, I got on the show. There's no regrets. But because I have my two greatest loves, I don't want to be on the road 7, 8 months a year. You can't blame me that, right? By the way, here's my schedule for Finding Bigfoot. This is what being on Finding Bigfoot is like. It is not glamorous, by the way, in case you have any misconceptions about that. We work 6 days a week, between 8 to 18 hours a day, sometimes more. I've worked 22, 23-hour days before. Very rarely less. I have worked 4 to 6 hours, but that's kind of rare. That one day off a week happens to be Sunday, because Bobo refuses to work on holy days, which for him means football. You understand. So that Sunday is usually spent doing laundry and trying to find a beer, which isn't exactly easy, it turns out. I'm from Oregon, that's beer country, right? But you know, I didn't know this, but there are dry counties in the South. I had no idea, you know? It's a rude awakening for someone like myself. But anyway, that was my schedule, so you can't blame me for not really carrying the shows over. And besides, I'm going on to do bigger and better things. Taking an inspiration from Expedition Bigfoot, Dave and Melinda Becerra, I've now opened my own Bigfoot museum on the slopes of Mount Hood in a town called Boring, Oregon. We're by far the most exciting thing in Boring, and that's not a slight on all the other businesses there in Boring. It's just that my museum is pretty awesome, and it's getting better and better all the time. We've been open for 5.5 weeks now. So if you ever do come to the West Coast, by all means, come by and say hi, and say that you saw me out at Marion, North Carolina, and I'll greet you with a big warm smile, because that's what I do. So anyway, I've got some big things planned. The museum is taking off. I'm still running expeditions twice a year. Well, this past summer I did it twice. The summer before I did it 5 times. Got footage, by the way. We got footprints, daylight sighting, footage, and lots of sounds recorded. The footage isn't very good. It's not going to convince anybody. But we do think it's a Bigfoot based on the context. And of course, I haven't stopped Bigfooting. But you have to remember, I didn't start Bigfooting because of the show. I was already Bigfooting. That's what I do. I'm 48 years old. I'm almost 49 in November. I've been doing this for 25 years. I'm not going to stop, right? And great things are coming out, by the way, right now, which is something I might want to mention to you, since some of you, I imagine, fancy yourself to be Bigfooters, Bigfoot researchers in various ways. So I would like to encourage you to do something for me. Yeah, please continue to collect sighting reports. Yes, please continue to write things down. Look for patterns, look for interesting behaviors in these sighting reports. But I feel a sneeze coming, by the way, so well, I'll let you know when it comes. But as a community, as Bigfoot researchers, it is time to move past sighting reports. There are literally tens of thousands of these on record. And they do have a value. And everybody loves a good story. We're hardwired for it. The human species is hardwired genetically to love a good story. But it's time to move past that as researchers. I'm on a soapbox, I know. And some of you guys love sighting reports more than anything, I know. Great, do what you love, please. But for the rest of you who want to push the subject further forward, it is time to start gathering evidence. It is time to start gathering footprint casts and tree breaks and hair samples, anything you can get and bring back, because your story is not evidence. It's certainly not good evidence, and that's not a slight against you. Remember, I've seen a Bigfoot too. My sighting isn't good evidence either. I'm in the same bucket as you guys, right? Because my story of seeing a Bigfoot, and I'll tell you that in a minute if you want to know, because I know you love a good story. Although it's not that good of a story. But my story has to go through my perception. I saw it. How good of an observer am I? You don't know. How good were the seeing conditions? You don't know. Was it dark? Was it light? What was the distance? All those things matter. And then you have to depend on my language ability to tell you about my experience. How good of a linguist am I? Like, how good am I at communicating what I saw? How good are you at perceiving and interpreting what I saw? You see that? Every one of those things is a filter between you and the thing that happened, the thing that was observed. That's why our stories aren't good evidence. There's too much subjectivity there. But you bring me a cast, it doesn't matter about your perception of it, or nor mine. You bring me a hair sample, we put it under a microscope. We can see if it's an ape in less than a minute. That is not subjective evidence. So if you do fancy yourself a Bigfooter, and I'm not scolding you, well, maybe a couple of you, but if you do fancy yourself a Bigfoot researcher, up your game, or up yours. I liked it. It's a little disrespectful, but I do love you, you know that. Okay, my story. First night investigation filming Finding Bigfoot ever. Well, except for the pilot. We filmed the pilot in Alaska. But the first episode of the first season we filmed here in North Carolina. We investigated Mike Green's thermal video, which I believe is real, by the way. It's in Uwharrie National Forest. You've probably seen it. We were at a spot about 2 miles off trail. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning. And the producers were really furious at us. Because back during first season, they thought that these 4 Bigfooters that they hired, Matt, Bobo, Renee, and I, would be happy to be on television because of this idea of fame or money or whatever. Fame sucks, money's not that good, just so you know. They thought that, oh, these guys are gonna be thrilled to be on TV, so they were trying to pull stuff over on y'all. They were trying to do things like, hey, that stick is broken, just say a Bigfoot stepped on it. We need some TV to go here. And we wouldn't, because they foolishly hired real Bigfooters. See, they tried to get actors, like a lot of those ghost shows and stuff, And even a lot of the Bigfoot shows, they've got actors. Not all of them. There's some real paranormal sort of folks out there, but a whole lot of them. A surprising percentage of these people were actors, like waiting tables before they started doing this sort of stuff, you know? But they foolishly hired real Bigfooters. So we refused to succumb to their pressure. And so the producers were furious at us for not cooperating and making brilliant TV with them. And we were just furious at them for trying to make us lie, which was our perception. And then we're on break at about 2 or 2:30 in the morning. We're all pissed, pardon me, fuming. And then we hear Moneymaker. Who's on the hill? We're ignoring him. Cliff, are you on the hill? No, Matt, why? Someone on the hill. No, whatever. Renee, are you on the hill? No, Matt. Bobo. Oh? Who's on the hill? And we're just ignoring him because, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. He's probably got 5 Red Bulls in him. Whatever. I'm not going to pay attention. Then he goes, who are you? He starts yelling. There's, you know the opening credits of Finding Bigfoot? There's something on the hill. That's that. Well, at some point or another, Matt decides that it's a drunk guy spying on us. 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 miles off trail, at a site of repeated occurrences, including sightings, where no one knew we were going to be. He yells at the thing, identify yourself. The thing starts moving. He yells at it again, and it stops on one leg in mid-stride. He goes, it understood me. It starts walking again. At that point, I turn my head and I look up on the hill. It's maybe here to the buildings across the street. 70 yards or something? I don't know how far that is. I see through my thermal imager a human or a Bigfoot, I don't know which one, walking from my left to my right in a very peculiar way. First of all, it's one color head to toe. Now remember, I'm not seeing this with night vision. I'm not seeing this with my own eyes. I'm seeing this through a thermal imager, which means that the hotter something is, the brighter it should be. Or in this case, the same color it should be. Red was hot in this particular therm. And it's one color, head to toe. See, if you look at somebody, and it was cold, this was February, by the way. If you look at somebody wearing a jacket, their face is very, very bright because it's very, very hot. But their torso is not as bright because the jacket is keeping all the heat in. You get what I'm saying? This was one color head to toe. And it was walking from left to right in a very peculiar way. From the waist up, it looked like it was almost swimming through have you ever gone in the shallow end of a pool? Like, the water's like to here, and you start scooping, like swimming like that kind of? It was doing that. It was like this scoopy sort of motion with its hands. But from the waist down, the legs were moving in a circular manner, almost like it was riding a bike or something. It wasn't, of course. It was in the woods. But whatever it was doing, it was navigating a wooded hillside without a light. That's when Matt decided to go kick its ass. So he takes off after it. And I'll tell you, whether it was some drunk guy spying on us or a real Bigfoot, I wish Matt would have caught it. But he took off after it. And it just went, and I'm watching this, and I see Matt going up there, then I see the thing go crests over the hill and disappeared. And I'm just going, what am I looking at? What am I, people ask me today, were you scared when you saw it? No, I was processing. I didn't have time to be scared. I didn't have time to think. I'm just like, what is it I'm looking at? What is this? Well, Matt takes off after with a thermal imager on one eye and night vision on the other. Never sees it again. I try to circle around the finger here, because there's like this finger coming down. I tried to circle around and catch it, never saw it again. And of course, on the episode, what you saw, remember there was a circle that circled around the thing going up over the hill? That is Matt. Because once, remember all the production team was all mad at us. They were saying, what are we gonna do with these Bigfoot people? They're not cooperating. We gotta make TV, what is going on? But when they saw Matt take off after this thing to go do whatever he thought he was gonna do to it, they went, oh my gosh, TV's finally happening. They picked up their cameras and started chasing Matt to film him. And that's what you see on the episode. The production company edited it, so you might think we filmed the Bigfoot. We had problems with the production company first season. And we also refused to work after that until the network people from New York flew out to calm down the Bigfooters. I often wonder, what were they thinking? We got to fly out to Oregon, because that's where we're filming at the time. We got to go calm down these Bigfooters. These New York people are unbelievable. But anyway, that is, and then Matt came back, and you saw the rest. The rest actually is on camera. Bobo and Renee are scolding him. Matt's defending himself and whatever. But that's the only Bigfoot I've ever seen. 25 years of doing this, and that's the one and only sighting I've had. Not even that good of a sighting, really. Weirder, crazier things have happened in my life than that. Even on the show, crash landing in a hot air balloon, almost being crushed between two semis which are being driven around by a PA. Any time Moneymaker is driving is interesting. Yeah, a lot of stuff happened on the show. Sightings happened, by the way, too, on the show. Bobo saw one in Ohio, off camera. One of our camera guys, Tyler, saw one in Ohio, a different place in Ohio. No, Alabama. He saw one there. Guy named Mantooth saw one in Kentucky. I love Kentucky, by the way. I was just there last weekend. Cryptid Con, a wonderful event. But anyway, sorry, I'm a little hoarse. I guess that makes me a pony. So that's kind of my gist. That's what I've been up to lately. I do a lot of these gigs. I think this is my 16th one this season. Next week, I'm in Pocatello, Idaho. The week after that, I'm in Bend, Oregon. The week after that, I'm in Washington. The week after that, I'm in Oregon. The week after that, I'm in Texas. I've got a lot going on, man, a lot. And I do these all the time, but one of my favorite things to do whenever I do this is I take a few questions from the audience, because I like to talk, I guess. What do you guys want to know? Ask me anything, I dare you. Yes? She wants to know if my wife was a believer before the show and if she's a believer now. Melissa is her name. Melissa came on the show as a PA, a production assistant. She's done crafty, which is like food services. She does special effects makeup stuff. She assistant directs. She does all sorts of stuff. Because when you're in that line of work, and if you're not cast, then you do everything. Production. And like my good friend Sean says, as long as you're humble, you'll always have a job. When she came on the show, she was interested in ghosts and UFOs and stuff, and like Bigfoot, yeah, sure. Didn't really think much about it. But when she was on the show, and I did my best to make sure she was on the show for more than one season, as we were slowly falling in love. She had experiences on the show. In Maine, she got growled at by something very, very loud and very, very large. Never saw it. Scared the willies out of her. Nobody likes to see anybody without their willies. In Oregon, she was out with Moneymaker, and they heard a yell. And now we live in the woods on the slopes of Mount Hood, outside of Portland, about 45 minutes or an hour outside of Portland, which is a lovely town. It's not all Antifa and Proud Boys, by the way. Don't believe the media. I think you guys know that better than pretty much anybody. Don't believe the media. It's a lovely town with lovely people. But we live in the woods outside of Portland, and it turns out, I've only lived in this part of the country, excuse me. Well, I lived inside Portland for about 10 years. In the last 2 years, I've lived in the woods. I finally got out, basically. And obviously, a guy like myself would choose their rural property based on sighting reports. What else would you do? Not how nice of a house it is, how much land can you get, and how many sighting reports are nearby. So there's Bigfoots in my neighborhood. She's heard them on our property now. On my property, Melissa has God bless her, she stopped smoking about 1.5 years ago. She was never a heavy smoker anyway, but she'd have like one at night. I guess that's something that smokers do. I'm not a smoker myself. But she'd go out on the porch. And while out on the porch, in the woods here, she would hear knocks. She would hear calls. Every once in a while, not like every night, not even once a month. Like 3 or 4 times since we lived there. So she knows they're real now, based on her experience, and also just this relentless exposure to the evidence that you would get by living with me. And she is half owner of the museum as well. So when she first signed up for the show, maybe. Never thought about it so much. But now, yeah, she knows they're real, based on the evidence, most importantly, and then based on her experiences. Any other questions? Anything at all? Yes, sir. Oh, thank you. Tips for Bigfooting, squatching. Absolutely. Number 1, go for another reason. Because most of the time, Bigfoots aren't there. And frankly, most of the time, most of the people who see Bigfoot aren't out there looking for them. They're doing other stuff. Since Bigfoots they're very rare. There aren't thousands of these things in North Carolina, right? There's probably 50 or 100 or maybe 150, maybe. They're very rare animals. So they're hard to come across. So if you go for another reason, you'll never be disappointed. Go because you like to fish. Go because you like to hunt. Go because you like to spend time in the woods with your friends or family. And do Bigfooting while you're there. But other than that, take notes. Bring a journal. People ask, what's the most important piece of equipment you could bring out with you Bigfooting? A journal. So you can write down things like the date, the weather, the barometric readings, the moon phase, the temperature, what animals you saw, what animals you didn't see that you should have, what plants are blooming, what food items are there, what tracks you saw in the ground. Where did you go? Did you see any other people out there? Did you hear any noises at night? All that sort of stuff is very important. It's boring, but it's very important. And that's the kind of stuff, if you gather that kind of evidence for 5 or 10 or 20 years, it turns into meaningful, exciting things. Any other questions? Yes? Yes. She asked if I'd ever seen any hair samples. Just recently, I'm old, so recently means like the last couple years. Like last year at some point, is that okay? I brought all the hair samples that I have collected personally or had sent to me over the last 10, 20 years. I had about 18 samples in my collection. I brought them to Dr. Jeff Meldrum's lab. Dr. Meldrum and I are pretty good friends. He stays at the house when he's in town. He goes on expeditions with me, that sort of stuff. We'd go out for beers, but he's Mormon, he doesn't drink. So when I was last in Pocatello, I brought all my hair samples to his laboratory, and we sat down for 2 or 3 hours and went through my entire collection. We had 1 out of the 18. And it came from a researcher in northern Kentucky. Woo! From northern Kentucky, and his name is Tom Shea. Tom Shea runs a little blog, Northern Kentucky Bigfoot Research Group or something like that. He is, in my opinion, and I think Bobo agrees with me, the best Bigfoot researcher I've ever known or heard of. Like you think of the luminaries. Roger Patterson doesn't hold a candle to Tom. Bob Titmus doesn't hold a candle. John Green holds a candle, but it's not as bright. As far as data collection, Tom saw a Sasquatch back in 84 or 86, and ever since then he's been out every chance he gets, follows up every single sighting report in his neighborhood, and there are Bigfoots in his neighborhood, and he takes notes. He has 3 or 4 spiral notebook, he has 3 or 4 piles this big as a speaker, of spiral notebooks full of the exact kind of information I told this young man over here to go gather. And he has cast more footprints than any other researcher live or dead. He personally has cast over 200, he believes. He's never sat down and counted them. He doesn't think much about them. And no one's ever heard of the guy. But Tom Shea is going to go down in history. Tom also collected hair samples, and that is the sample that I'm referring to. If you ever get hairs that you think are Sasquatches, there's a couple things you can look for. First of all, most animals have fur. Fur means this, there's an overcoat and an undercoat that's kind of wavy. So guard hairs and like insulator hairs or something like that. I forget what the term is. But it's to keep heat in, basically. It acts like a wetsuit kind of. We don't have that. Apes don't have that. Sasquatches don't have that. We are in a different family, the hominid family, and we have hair, not fur. It's a difference. Their hair looks a lot like ours under a microscope. There are a couple differences though. Ape hair, and we are biologically apes. I don't care about your religion and stuff like that. I'm talking biology, right? We are biologically apes, and we all have similar features, including our hair. Ape hair, human hair, gorilla hair, Sasquatch hair, has parallel sides with very, very little taper all the way to the end. And at the end, it doesn't taper away like all the other animals do. It comes to a blunt end, not cut, blunt. And you can see that in a microscope. Every human will have a cut end or a split end, depending on your conditioner. But you get me. Also another feature, every Sasquatch hair, when illuminated from behind, will shine a reddish color. Even if the animal's hair is black, it will shine a reddish color when shined through. And the third feature is that it lacks or only has a fragmentary medulla. The medulla is the hollow center shaft of the hair. If you ever look at a hair under a microscope, there's a black thing in the middle. That is the medulla. Sasquatches either totally lack that or have a fragmentary medulla, which is unfortunate because the medulla is the only location within a hair that you can get DNA material. So the odds are stacked against us. But the hair that we examined from Tom Shea has all of those characteristics, and it was found in a line of Sasquatch footprints. It's Sasquatch hair. Any other questions? Bright shirt. There it is. Does Renee believe or not? Who cares? I mean, honestly, I mean, and it's not a slight against Renee, but at the end of the day, I don't bother arguing with people who think the earth is flat either. They're wrong. You know, it's the truth. I'm not here to convince anybody that Bigfoot's real. And I long ago stopped trying to convince Renee. Yeah, she wouldn't look at the cast. Well, how am I gonna show you why I think this is real? You know, like, and she's spoken to hundreds, if not thousands, of witnesses. It's not my place to convince her. It's my place to present the evidence to people who have ears to listen. That's my thought on it. Renee's a very nice lady. Far more stubborn than most should be, though. You. You're probably one of several. I'm sorry, we just opened up on August 2nd of this past year, so. Well, shoot, I'm sorry about that. Well, it's Oregon. You're going to come back again. I mean, it's awesome. Yeah. And by the way, she mentioned the Bigfoot cruise. That's something else I've been involved with. There's this cruise that leaves out of downtown Portland, goes up the Willamette River. And when I talk about river, this is like a river that's a mile wide. Like, these are big old rivers. Like, most of the water north of California and west of the Rockies flows into the Columbia River. It's huge, just like 1.5 miles wide. So the Willamette River, a big old river, flows into the Columbia, and they take jet boats up the Willamette, and then up the Columbia, and then through the dam, and then back again. It's like a 4 or 5 hour cruise. And that cruise company reached out to me to develop a Bigfoot cruise this past year. So everybody on board has Bluetooth headphones, and all the way up and down the river, I'm pointing out Bigfoot hotspots. This sighting report happened over here, and I have footprint casts on board. I have photographs of Sasquatches on board that we use in our museum as well. It's a fun trip. So if you do come out to out west, the Pacific Northwest, drop by and hang out in Portland for a day. Come see the museum, go on the boat cruise. There's a bunch of squatchy stuff going on there. So I forgot about that. Thank you. One more question, that gentleman. Well, yeah, there are smatterings about it, but at the same time, there's very often sightings at Mammoth Caves. Very few of them actually reach the media. It kind of skews the whole thing. When you have your ear to the ground like I do, and really my researcher out there is either Tom Shea in the northern part or Charlie Raymond, who runs the Kentucky Bigfoot Research Group. He's been working the Mammoth Caves for like 10 years. I know of about 24 reports out of that area. So yeah, Mammoth Caves has Bigfoots, and one happened to reach the news. But don't let that skew the data. We know they're there, we've known for a long time, and there are a lot of reports from that particular area. So yeah. I'm afraid that he said it was one more, but I'm gonna go above his head and say you are the last one. If I did what? Face to face? If I came face to face with a Sasquatch, would I be scared? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm not as smart as I look. I promise. And then, because here's the thing. There's a very large portion of the Bigfoot community that screams, these things are people, they're forest people, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay, whatever. They're wild animals. And they are the scariest type of wild animal there is, a human-like wild animal. Humans scare me a lot more than most any other animal does, because we're far more dangerous. So a wild human-like animal is probably the scariest thing I can possibly imagine. Chimpanzees, which are about this tall, are about 8 times stronger than like Arnold Schwarzenegger or like big bodybuilder guys. They can literally rip your arm off. Horrifying. What could something that big do? They should be respected, not because they're people, because they're not people. Their feet are different, they're covered in hair, they're 8 feet tall, they have different hands, they have different needs, they have different wants than we do. I think it's actually disrespectful to refer to them as people. They should be respected because they're Sasquatches, not people. It's like treating your dog like a person. And hey, I got a dog, I get it. But I'm not gonna give my dog chocolate. People love chocolate, it kills dogs. They have different needs than we do. But you should be cautious around Sasquatches, because at the end of the day, they are wild animals that we don't really understand. And sure, most of them walk the other way and never look back. They don't want anything to do with us. They're not habitual killers or something like that. But then again, neither are grizzly bears. You're not gonna go up to one of them and try to shake its hand, right? But if they were truly out to get us, there'd be very few of us left. Respect them for what they are, Sasquatches. They're very special. They're very intelligent. They're probably our closest walking, living relative. They're a part of our hominin family when you go back into our evolutionary family tree. They're an offshoot thereof. They're our cousins. They should be respected. And I think at the end of the day, their discovery might ironically lead to us leaving a smaller footprint on our planet. Something to think about. Thank you very much, North Carolina.
Ladies and gentlemen, Cliff Barackman.